Hey everyone, it's Kyle. Azora Hype. Game of Thrones Season 8 is finally here, the long night is finally over, and you know what that means? It's time for daily Game of Thrones Season 8 videos. In today's video, there is spoilers for Game of Thrones Season 8 and for Daenerys Targaryen's endgame. So beware, this video does contain high levels of hype. Now without further ado, let's jump into the video. Daenerys Targaryen is one of the most important characters in A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones. She's the mother of dragons, but she also lost a dragon to the Night King when she went beyond the wall to save Jon Snow, Jorah, and the others last season. But what is Daenerys Targaryen's endgame? There's a big clue in her House of the Undying vision in Game of Thrones Season 2, Episode 10. So, let's take a deeper look. The show version of Daenerys Targaryen's House of the Undying vision is quite different from the books because it doesn't give us the important information on the prophecies attached to this event. And when we're watching the House of the Undying vision unfold in the show, we have to absorb this information visually when we're trying to interpret what is happening. Daenerys sees many visions in the book version of the House of the Undying, including a blue flower growing from a chink in a wall of ice filling the air with sweetness, which I believe is meant to represent Jon and Daenerys' relationship, but also Jon Snow's true parentage. Here's a quote from the books. "The moment when all the smiles died, when Prince Rhaegar Targaryen urged his horse past his own wife, the Dornish princess Elia Martell, to lay the queen of the beauty's laurel in Lyanna's lap. He could see it still. A crown of winter roses, blue as frost." Of course, in the show version of the House of the Undying, we see Daenerys leave the throne room while not touching the Iron Throne, to go beyond the wall through a snowstorm where she reaches a tent with Khal Drogo and what is presumably Rhaego. I believe this could represent what could have happened if things happened differently, but Daenerys listens to the call of her children, the dragons, choosing a different path, moving on from the past. This could be interpreted in many different ways, but it is my belief she will have to choose between power, the Iron Throne, or survival, Jon Snow. We only got one major Game of Thrones Season 8 trailer this year, and understandably so. This is the final season, and the showrunners don't want to spoil too much of what's going to happen in Season 8. But what I find very interesting are the titles of the two smaller teaser trailers named Together and Survival. If Daenerys were to choose power, it would almost assuredly mean that she would try and remove Cersei from the Iron Throne, abandoning the themes which are represented in these two teaser trailers. But if she does choose survival, which seems to be the case as she does pledge to fight with the North and Jon Snow, and if she remains alive by the end, then surely she would be deserving to be the Queen of Westeros. Now, I am of the belief that Daenerys will fight side by side with Jon until the very end. However, something we have to connect with everything I've said so far is the interview that Emilia Clarke had with Vanity Fair, in which she said the final scene of Daenerys Targaryen really screwed her up, and that knowing that this is going to be the lasting flavor in someone's mouth of what Daenerys is, shook her to her core. The other night I was having a conversation with the amazing community member and artist Urtach Altanaz, where we were discussing Daenerys Targaryen's endgame, and Urtach brought up a very interesting point, that we could see a turning point in Daenerys Targaryen's final arc after the Battle of Winterfell in Episode 3. Now, imagine for a second, if Jon and Dany's armies do get decimated by the Night King and many of their friends, and some of our favorite characters die in this battle like Jorah Mormont and Missandei and Grey Worm, and perhaps even another dragon dies, then we will have a situation where Daenerys blames Cersei for not helping them out in the battle against the Night King and the Army of the Dead. Now, if they do lose the Battle of Winterfell, and this is the hard-home event of Season 8, we could see them retreat to Dragonstone to make their final plans on what to do after losing all of their army. We see in this shot from one of the teaser trailers that Jon and Daenerys will be at Dragonstone, and we could see a scenario where Jon and Daenerys, or one of them, goes to meet with Cersei to try and get her help since she has the biggest army left in Westeros and the aid of the Golden Company. I think it would be interesting if Jon volunteers to go like he volunteered to go beyond the wall to capture a White, but we know what happened the last time a Stark went to King's Landing like this. Mad King Aerys ordered the execution of Rickard Stark, and as a result, Brandon Stark killed himself as well, watching his father die strangling himself. So, this decision from Jon might not be a good decision. I think it's very likely that if they did have to go ask for Cersei's help one more time, that both of them wouldn't go together because Cersei isn't trustworthy, and if they got caught together and imprisoned and or killed, it would be very, very bad news for the Realms of Men. Now, if you don't want any spoilers for what may happen in Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 5 or 6, I suggest you leave now because I'm going to share some very interesting pictures. Here we see what looks to be like part of King's Landing destroyed by Dragonfire, and these two towers could hold the giant crossbows that Qyburn showed Cersei last season when we saw the skull of Balerion the Black Dread. If Cersei is not going to help the North and she does believe what she saw at the Dragon Pit, then she will do her best to try to protect the crown and her power, which is represented by her sitting on the Iron Throne as the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. If we take a look at this city map, it shows us that there's quite a fair distance between the city gates and the Iron Gate to the Red Keep. Now, I could see a scenario where Cersei closes the gates of King's Landing, much like Mad King Aerys did as she spirals down into madness and in paranoia. And I do believe if this scenario does go down, Jon will go to meet Cersei alone. And I do believe it's possible that he will get captured like Rickard Stark did. Now, there's one thing that I believe absolutely that we will see in Daenerys Targaryen's final arc in Game of Thrones Season 8. And that is Daenerys Targaryen will not die before she reaches King's Landing. Her whole epic arc has taken her so far, and I don't believe it's her destiny to die at the hands of the White Walkers or the Night King in the North. Did we watch her journey for all of these years for her to not even reach the throne room in King's Landing? And I'm not just talking about the House of the Undying vision where she doesn't touch the throne. Daenerys Targaryen has to reach the throne room in King's Landing. Daenerys is destined to be in King's Landing in the end, and I can't confirm whether she will die or not, but I believe she will be going there as we saw in the House of the Undying vision. I believe what we saw in the House of the Undying with the Burnt Red Keep and with her in the throne room will happen. Daenerys is going to fight her way to the Red Keep with Drogon and could be who we saw flying over King's Landing in Bran Stark's vision. Daenerys sacrificing herself in some sort of way for Jon or to rescue Jon and abandoning the Iron Throne would be one of the defining moments of the series. And I also like the idea that both power and survival can be achieved by securing the Iron Throne and King's Landing. I thought it would be interesting to take a look at the House of the Undying vision in a different way since the books and the show version are so different. And the way we interpret reading something and experiencing something visually could mean that we are actually going to see Daenerys Targaryen in the throne room like this scene. Some of the other ideas that I like that could happen in relation to the House of the Undying vision is Cersei deciding that neither her or Daenerys should have the Iron Throne, so she blows up the Red Keep with wildfire. And if Cersei is to go full-blown Mad Queen, she is going to have to attempt to do something that is even more terrible than blowing up the Sept of Baelor. And blowing up all of King's Landing would certainly fit the bill. I also like the idea of Jon going to save Daenerys in reverse in this scenario and killing Cersei as the Valonqar, which would be ironic because Cersei would be part of this reenactment of what we saw with the Mad King Aerys, Rickard Stark, and Brandon Stark. The Lone Wolf dies and the pack survives. Cersei will be alone at the end because together the realms of men fight together for their survival. In the end, I believe that Daenerys will come to fully understand the idea of her duty to the Seven Kingdoms, because if she is to be the true Queen of Westeros, she will need to protect her people. I do want to dive more deeply into the House of the Undying prophecies from the books because of the importance of the fires that Daenerys must light and because of her betrayals as well. I think that doing a second video on this subject is a good idea because even though I don't believe that Jon will be treasonous towards Daenerys, I could see him going off to meet with Cersei to try and change her mind one last time, even though Daenerys forbids it. But what do you think? What is your interpretation of the House of the Undying vision in the show? Will Daenerys sit the Iron Throne? Will she die and sacrifice herself in some sort of heroic way? Let me know your thoughts, your theories, and your epic tinfoil in the comment section. If you want to see more Game of Thrones videos like this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. I'm going to be doing daily Game of Thrones Season 8 videos. That's right, daily videos, and I'm going to be doing live streams as well. And tomorrow, be on the lookout for my Episode 1 breakdown for Game of Thrones Season 8 Episode 1. All the linky goodness to my social media, Patreon, and more is in the description of this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Hype and love.